Hi, I'm Jake. I make RPG supplements and videos about Pathfinder 2, or PF2. I love PF2. And there is something that we should talk about, the Impossible Playtest. I want to show you what I do on these kind of surveys to give them the most useful information I could think of. Or if you've just never done a survey like this before, you can watch and see how somebody goes through it before doing it yourself, so you know what questions to be prepared for. So I'm opening the survey now, and I'll do it as we talk. This survey will collect your feedback on the character classes from the Impossible Playtest so we can improve them for the final text, and that was the Runesmith and the Necromancer. You can answer questions about either or both of the classes, and how many you choose to talk about will affect how long the survey takes. If you want to leave the survey and come back later, you can do so after you complete a page. When you return, use the previous and next buttons at the bottom of each survey page to find the class for which you want to take the survey or update your previous answers. Before we start talking about the classes, we'd like to know a little bit about you. Note that this survey is anonymous and that none of the information given in this survey is linked to identifying information in any way. How experienced are you with Pathfinder? Extremely, very, somewhat, not so, not at all. Extremely. 2. Have you played one or more sessions of Pathfinder Society or Starfinder Society in the past 6 months? No, I don't play Society. 3. How experienced are you with tabletop role-playing games in general? Extremely experienced. We'll just go with that. Which tabletop role-playing game have you played most in the past year? That's Pathfinder 2. Next. Do you want to give feedback on the Necromancer? How satisfied were you with this class's basic statistics? Key ability is intelligence. Extremely satisfied because I think it makes sense. Hit points. I was also extremely satisfied about that because they have 8 plus con modifier. It makes sense for a Necromancer that they're a little bit hardier. Plus, some of their abilities require that they be in melee, or at least suggests that they are. I think I'm going to change the key ability to very satisfied because I don't really care if it's intelligence, wisdom, charisma. Perception proficiency. They are trained in perception. I think that's neither here nor there. I don't really care. It's a caster. I don't expect them to have amazing perception, but obviously that's not great perception. So somewhat satisfied. Saving their proficiencies. Expert in fortitude, trained in reflex and will. And I was happy about that because I want a Necromancer to be hardy. And so I'm very satisfied with that. I wouldn't say extremely satisfied because they only get 1 expert proficiency of their saving throws. How satisfied were you with their number of trained skills? Well, there's a cat butt in the way. For skills, they are trained in occultism and they're trained in a number of additional skills equal to 2 plus their intelligence modifier. And I'm going to say extremely satisfied with that because the occultism makes a lot of sense for them, so it's just predetermined for you. And that seems like an appropriate number of skills for a caster. So I can't really expect more. Weapon proficiencies. Well, they're casters, so simple and unarmed. That's kind of what I expect. Armor proficiencies. Well, they're a caster, so light armor and unarmored is pretty much what I expect. Although I would say that they would do much better in their melee options if they had a better armor proficiency. So I'm going to say somewhat satisfied. You'll notice I'm not saying dissatisfied to any of these because even if they're not what I would actually prefer, they make sense for what the class can do. They are balanced, and they would function well with what they've been given. They're not deficient in something that's going to impair their ability to play the character. Spells known and spell slots. That I'm not so satisfied on. And that's the main reason I'm taking this survey. Because they have reduced spell slots and they have more focus spells, but there's still a limit on how many focus points you have at a time. And instead of some of the spells that they could have taken, they mostly just translated that spell, a specific spell from that level, into a focus spell. So sure, they're giving them more flexibility, but they're just removing their options. And I don't like that. How interesting were these different mechanical options used by the Necromancer class? Necromancer Spellcast. Okay, interesting is italicized, so they just want to know if it's an interesting tack to take. I want to say not so interesting, because it robs them of something. And they don't have as many options as other people do. It'd be fine if they had more focus points per day, but they don't. Types of thralls, like feats or grave spells that create specific thralls. That is... I guess it's mildly interesting, so I have to say somewhat. Because I don't think it works well, but it is interesting. And they could expand upon it and make it better. Thrall abilities, like feats or grave spells that destroy a thrall to create an effect. I do like that. That I find extremely interesting, because it's a creative use of a temporary resource. Spell-shaped feats. Well, okay, interesting. How interesting are the spell-shaped feats that they had? I'm going to have to say I'm going to have to say very interesting, because they could have more of them. But the spell-shaped feats that they have make sense for a caster and make sense for a necromancer. How interesting were their other necromancer feats? I'm going to say very interesting, because some of them have very interesting applications. Like I mentioned, doing melee as a necromancer. That would be a lot of fun, but they don't have enough support for it. So I would say it's interesting, but it's not conclusive. My opinion isn't conclusive, because I need more options or more robust ways, more robust support for those feats. How powerful were these different mechanical options used by the Necromancer class? Necromancer Spellcasting. It is powerful, because they get a lot of focus spell options. But still, they have fewer spells per day, so it's only going to be somewhat powerful. Types of thralls. Like feats or grave spells that create specific thralls. Not so powerful. They definitely could have done better, but they're not shit. They're usable. They're just not great. Thrall abilities, like feats or grave spells that destroy a thrall to create an effect. That... I find very powerful. They're not broken by any means, but they are extremely useful. Spell-shaped feats. How powerful are they? They're spell-shaped feats. They have Conceal Spell, Reach Spell, and Quicken Casting. I mean, technically the way Quicken Casting is worded, it's too powerful, but they didn't mean to write it that way. That's just a typo, so I'm going to assume that it fits Quicken Casting for every other spellcaster. So they're not extremely powerful, they're just average. Because it's 3 somewhat boring spell-shaped feats. Other Necromancer feats. Not so powerful, because they have mechanical issues. Usually it's just difficult to use them, or it requires too much setup. And again, that's why I'm here, to talk about the thralls and how clunky some of it is. How easy to understand were these different mechanical options used by the Necromancer class? Necromancer Spellcasting. Easy to understand? Extremely easy. Although I should say for most people it's probably very easy. I'm just really familiar with it. Types of thralls, like feats or grave spells that create specific thralls. How easy to understand were they? They were easy to understand. Very. I just don't like them. Thrall abilities, like feats or grave spells that destroy a thrall to create an effect. They were mostly easy. I'm going to say somewhat easy, because some of them need a little bit more clarification, because I had to sort of picture an actual situation where that would be useful. I think they could just add a few more words of clarification to some of the feats to make them more easy to understand, more of a quick read for people, for the thrall abilities. Spell-shaped feats. How easy were they to understand? They're extremely easy, because of the same spell-shaped feats other casters get. Other Necromancer feats. Somewhat easy. The typos and seeming like they left things out really stood in the way of them being easy to understand. I think that all things considered, I'm going to have to go with a non-combat option for the one that's the most powerful, because it is so versatile and convenient, and it's just going to come up so often. Bone Speaker. You can recall knowledge on living creatures with an internal or external skeleton using undead lore. You can also perform a forensic examination on a corpse using undead lore instead of medicine. It's just very useful. It's only one single feat to get to recall knowledge on almost everything that you're going to come across. So that's very useful. That's very powerful. Bone Speaker. Now select the level 8 to 14 class feat you think is the most powerful. Life Sense, because it breaks the fourth wall. Life Sense lets you know the current hit points and temporary hit points of any living or undead creature you can see within 30 feet. I don't think that it should say that. I don't think that it should have that many options. Or if it does, then you need to know how many hit points of damage each of your spells does too. Like, it's not, there's not enough thought put into Life Sense. Another reason I think Life Sense is too powerful is that it steps on the toes of healers. Like, you'd be able to call out how much healing each person needs. I don't like that it would gamify in-world activities, but that's not why I'm saying it's the most powerful. It's because it steps out of the bounds of what a spell should be doing. So, that one. Select the 16 through 20 class feat you think is the most powerful. I'm gonna have to say Desperate Revival. Not because it lets you not die, but because it drains health from everyone around you and could heal you for a whole fuck ton. It does too much. Like, I'd be fine if it were just different. Like, maybe you turn into undead instead of hitting 0. But as it is, it doesn't just keep you from dying, it could heal you full. In the playtest, the Necromancer has various grave spells, many of which cost a focus point as normal, but also require sacrificing a thrall to create their effect. Which of the following best describes your experience with this subset of grave spells? I think that even though I have not played the Necromancer, I want my opinion heard, so I'm going to say my concern. I found I often had enough thralls to cast a grave spell, but I didn't have enough focus points. Because that's logical. The thralls can be created infinitely. Focus points, there's 3 per battle. So that. Are you chirping? Yeah, hi. In the playtest, the Necromancer's thralls can be destroyed by enemy attacks. How frequently was the thrall you wanted to use destroyed by an enemy attack before you could use it? For this one, because I haven't played it, I don't have any basis for answering it directly. So I don't want to answer that, so I'm going to leave it blank. Rate your overall enjoyment of the Necromancer class. I love it, but I think that it could use some work. So I'm going to say 4. Because 5 stars is perfect. And I'm not just doing this on the premise of nothing's ever quite perfect. It's that it actually needs help. But I like it a lot. It does some things that I really wanted a Necromancer to do. And so they don't deserve just a 3. It's not just adequate. It's cool. And that's all I'm going to show you for today. I've shown you how to go through a survey for one of the classes. The next one is going to be much the same. When I fill out a survey for anything, I fill it out with the thought that the person reading it wants to know what changes they need to make. They don't really care about how happy I am with something. They want to know if they need to fix something. So my emotions aren't really the most helpful thing to rely on. It's what actually needs work. What is not going to function well in the system. What is just a miss and doesn't work at all. Like the thrall's not moving unless you use a focus point to make them move. So that's it for this video. I hope it helped. I don't know if it would. Just sharing my life with you. Thank you for being here and watching these videos. Liking, subscribing, and sharing all helps me and helps the kitties who are currently eating my finger. Hi. And if you want to join our Discord to meet like-minded nerdy people and talk about builds or different mechanics, or if you're new to Pathfinder, we'd be happy to welcome you and help you make your characters. We also have some good resources there of different character sheets to use and whatnot. Patreon link is also below. If you pledge $5 or more per month, then you get entered into a drawing to win something like this. 80mm D20. Or A little gemling dragon guy. Storm, my girlfriend, makes lots of stuff. It's cool. I have so much dice behind me. So anyway, if you want to see my video on Necromancer or Runesmith, the playlist is right there. And if you want to see one of my most recent live plays, Stolen Fate is a lot of fun. Come join us. See you there.